From being known as the rat who testified against his former associate John Gotti Jr., to becoming a motivational Mafia YouTuber who sells signed baseball bats on his website, the story of John Alite has been met with both positive and negative criticism throughout the internet, with comments under Vlad TV's interview stating, "This was an amazing interview. I just couldn't stop watching. This was put together so well, from the direct questions to the references of other interviews. This kept me glued to my screen. Great work." Another person would write the following: "Outstanding interview. Powerful stories and messages. Thank you so much, John Alite and Jean Borrello, for your time and inspirational message helping kids. And thank you, Vlad, for the great conversation." Now, while I happen to agree that these were amazing stories indeed, Alite tends to fall short when it comes to his motive as to why he tells these stories. And according to the former mobster, it's to inspire and send a positive message to kids and adults about the horrors of the criminal life. Though it seems like Alite wants to help others nowadays, he almost glamorizes his past life with several posts on the Mafia subreddit stating, "Out of all the reformed gangsters, Alite is the worst and least convincing. He hypes up the life and portrays himself as a super assassin with 40 hits. Then, because he wants the motivational speaker money too, he then talks to kids about how crime doesn't pay. Does his story even make sense as a cautionary tale? He ratted everyone out to avoid jail time. He's never really had any consequences for his actions." With someone replying, "His story is filled with holes because he's a proven pathological liar. Even when he testified against Gotti Jr., he was deemed an unreliable witness because of all the bullshit he spun." Now, you can say that Alite has become a walking meme, but you can't deny his stories are very intriguing indeed, with evidence validating some of his tall tales. So, who is this man? What are the truths to the many stories people claim to call fiction? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Grab a baseball bat, and welcome to the story of John Alite. John Alite always had a life of violence, claiming his brother tossed him out of a second-story window. And when John came to, he took a club and bashed his brother with it.
You know, we're 3, 4 years old. Most kids, when they're bleeding, they're crying for their mother. We were just used to getting bloodied up. We've hit each other with bottles, bats, threw each other through windows. I mean, my brother threw me through a second-floor window. So we're just used to it. And then at the end of the day, we end up making up, hugging each other and say, "I love you." I mean, it's just our mentality. We're just a little dysfunctional, but that's life.
But how well known was he when he first started appearing on podcasts? He virtually came out of nowhere with the internet wondering about the man. The story goes like this. He was a member of the Gambino crime family, like kind of a member, but not really because he wasn't Italian. So let's just call him an associate. He would grow up with John Gotti Jr., where he would eventually land himself an enforcer position for the Dapper Don's son. He would rise up to the ranks as top lieutenant, or how the New York Post would put it in 2009, Gotti Jr.'s former number 2. The article would also state that in the 1980s and 90s, Jr. ran a violent Queens gang that moved 8 kilograms of coke each month at $40,000 a kilogram, for a total of more than $300,000. For 10 years, Alite said, he was Jr.'s right-hand man, the two spending almost every day together. But he said Jr. let him take the fall with the older John Gotti when things went wrong, and the relationship soured. By the late 1980s, Alite would become even closer to John Gotti Jr., so much so that he began carrying out hits that were allegedly under his order. Alite would later testify that Gotti Jr. would allegedly participate in some of these whackings. It was evident Alite was associated with John Gotti Jr., with evidence dating back to the early 90s to an incident of Alite getting frisked alongside Jr. and Iggy Aloni that was featured on ABC News. Though there is plenty of evidence to support the fact that Alite was associated with John Gotti Jr., according to the man himself, in an interview on the YouTube channel American Made, Gotti's got a different story.
One of the cooperators on my last case was working on a book that really just basically ripped me a new backside. I spent the night agonizing over it. I called my mother the next morning and I said, "Ma, listen, if you never speak to me again, I'm going to have to live with it. Because if I can sit and accept this, if I can let a low life like this low life, a mutt that wasn't even a part of what we were, okay, sit here now and tell my story and my father's story. This is akin to basically, not that we're a royal family, because we're not, but the butler writes a book about the royal family, okay? Then the butler's butler writes a book about the royal family. Now the landscaper is going to write a book about the... What's next? What's next? The pool guy?
In the mid-90s, Alite would eventually take his criminal activities down to Tampa, Florida, where he ran a valet service with Louis Duke Mendel, known as Prestige Valet. According to the St. Petersburg Times, Alite would allegedly extort and threaten rival valet companies in the Tampa Bay area. And when then-President Duke Mendel of Prestige Valet was hoping to land the lucrative account of the Turtle Club, an 80,000 square foot nightclub in Clearwater, the owners telephoned to say they were hiring an out-of-town firm instead. Mendel's partner, John Alite, would eventually step in. Mendel states that he was not happy. He was screaming and yelling. On a different occasion, when a rival firm tried to take another one of Prestige's accounts, the Duke alleges that Alite told me they were going to walk up to them and cut them from ear to mouth with a razor blade. Though there is clear evidence that Alite was indeed a tough man by extorting businesses by means of intimidation, 1995 would cast another hurdle in John Alite's life. In November 1995, Alite got in trouble again when he was stopped with a gun. As a felon, he couldn't legally own one. He was sentenced to 3 years in Allenwood Federal Prison. While there, he met New York mobster Antonio Parlavecchio. Alite wouldn't stay out of trouble for too long, as in 2002, Alite was sent to prison again for smuggling sperm collection. Alite wouldn't stay out of trouble for too long, and in 2002, Alite was sent to prison again for smuggling sperm collection kits in and out of Allenwood for Parlavecchio's wife. Alite said he was trying to do a good deed for a woman over 40. Her biological clock was ticking, he said. I wanted to help her out. She wanted to have a baby. I couldn't believe I got sent to prison for something like that. He would later state to the Tampa Bay Times that he always ran Prestige as a legitimate business. I never ordered anybody to beat up anybody, he said. God as my witness, I didn't. I'll admit I've got a big mouth. When I yell, but I'm not a violent person.
So when someone said, did you kill Georgie Grasso? I'll give you names. Did he shoot him in the head? Yes, I did. Did somebody say, did you kill Johnny Gabbett? Yes, I did. I ordered him dead.
Did you kill Bruce Goddard? Unfortunately, I'm friends with his family now. Yes, I did. I ordered him dead.
Did you shoot Mike Lavigny in the chest? In protocols, he testified against you 25 years. Yes, I did. Did you shoot Ricky Stratton in the head on the Interborough Parkway? Johnny Alite, did you shoot him? Yes, I did. Did you shoot Paul G in front of John Gotti Sr.'s house and you didn't care it was in front of his house? Yes, I did. Did you shoot Nicky Pasquale 5 times on his porch and he lose his leg and he almost died? Yes, I did.
He said he left the United States in 2003 because he was tired of federal harassment. He was arrested November 26, 2004 in the posh Copacabana section of Rio de Janeiro. John was facing racketeering charges, which included acts such as murder, extortion, down to robbery, and would be caught by Interpol while he hid in Brazil, where he spent a few years in one of Brazil's worst prisons, and would eventually be extradited back to the United States to face criminal charges in 2008. As Alite faced many charges, the late 2000s really put John on the map as he would testify against his former associate, John Gotti Jr., in a sort of, if I'm going down, you're going down with me type of move. The New York Post in 2009 would write that Alite joined Jr.'s crew in 1984 and reported to him for 10 years. Alite said the crimes in which he was involved pulled in $50 million to $75 million for the Gambino family. He said he kept $10 million for himself and gave Jr. $6 million or $7 million. He was supposed to give Jr. $10 million but ripped him off. In the courtroom were Victoria Gotti, the widow of Dapper Don John Gotti, and her daughters Victoria and Angel, where they erupted in laughter when Alite described how much money he made, but otherwise they glared at him, especially Jr.'s sister Victoria. Alite testified at a trial last February that he had an affair with her. John Gotti Jr. would face a 4th mistrial where one juror stated that the evidence was just not there to prosecute the guy, and others said they did not believe the government's chief witness, John Alite, a confessed hitman and a former member of Mr. Gotti's crew. Alite would be sentenced to 100 months in prison with an additional 60 months of supervised probation, where he would have to pay up to $44,000 in restitution fees to the Sears Company, to a man named Ernie, and Papavero Funeral Home. The 10 years plus 60 months of probation didn't seem to be panning out in John's favor. Due to extradition laws and his cooperation, Alite was sentenced to 10 years in prison. With time served, he was released in 2013. He now dedicates much of his time to helping young men avoid following his example and being fooled by the mob's promise of loyalty. In 2015, journalist Peter Lance would send a 14-page letter to the judge who released Alite on supervised probation, stating his concern over the judge's decision, citing Alite had resorted to international cyberbullying, where Alite had received some criticism and rather than take it constructively, posted the woman's Facebook page stating to his followers that, "Next month when I come to the UK, I will pass her address out for you all to know her." In an email written to John Alite, Peter Lance would go on to ask, what kind of man who has recast himself as a motivational speaker to help children avoid lives of crime would resort to that kind of transatlantic cyberbullying? Nowadays, John Alite has his own YouTube channel, gives multiple interviews promoting his books, and appears on various podcasts discussing his former life with the Gambino crime family. If you stuck around to the end of this video, you've officially become made in the Scotch's crew. Just kidding, I'm a fucking loser. I don't have a crew. But what can I conclude about this John Alite fella? Is he a fraudster mobster? Depends on how you look at it. A person who has regrets and shares personal experiences to enrich our youth wouldn't sell baseball bats to their audience after claiming to be done with that life. To be honest, his stories seem very far-fetched, but it's also kind of hard to tell. There's no doubt in my mind that he was somewhat connected to John Gotti Jr.'s crew, since why would Gotti call him a mutt and mouth the words "I'll kill you" to Alite while he testified? Those seem like pretty harsh words for a person Gotti claims to be a nobody. How high up was Alite in the Mafia food chain? To be honest, I also can't really tell. He even says that he couldn't be made because he was Albanian. There's no way I believe he remembers every single name, killing, whacking, whatever the fuck you want to call it, of every person he was involved with. It almost seems like Alite resorted to cooperating with the government to get a lesser prison sentence. But who am I to judge, and who can we believe? It's difficult to trust the stories coming out of most of these YouTuber wise guys, since all of their motives for these amazing stories are slightly different.